Today, we are diving deep into one of the biggest and, frankly, one of the longest data breaches in corporate history. It's a wild story. A cyber heist that went on completely under the radar for 4 years, right inside one of the most famous names in the hotel business, Marriott. Just take a second and look at this number. 500 million. That's not their profits. That's not how many hotels they have. No, that's how many guests had their personal, private information stolen. We're talking about 500 million people. It's just staggering. So how does a heist that's been going on for 4 years finally get discovered? Well, our story really kicks off in 2018. That's when Marriott International had to come out and announce a security breach so huge it sent absolute shockwaves through the industry. And here's the real twist. The vulnerability, the weak link, it wasn't even in Marriott's own system, not originally. The hackers had gotten into the reservation database of Starwood hotels, which Marriott had just recently bought. And that's a huge lesson, right? When you buy a company, you're not just getting their buildings and their brand, you're also inheriting all of their problems, and in this case, their security hole. This brings us to the biggest mystery of this whole thing. This wasn't some quick smash and grab job. Nope. The attackers were just living inside the network, moving around, copying data for 4 straight years. So the question is, how on earth did they stay hidden for that long? Let's just break this timeline down because it's truly mind-blowing. The hackers first got in all the way back in 2014. And then, for the next 4 years, they just had the run of the place. They were operating completely undetected until finally, in 2018, someone noticed. 4 years. I mean, in the world of cybersecurity, that is an absolute eternity. It's the question every security expert on the planet was asking. How could a breach this big just fly under the radar for so long? Well, the answer is actually in how surprisingly simple their method was. So how'd they pull it off? It was really just a 3-step playbook. First, they got in through one single compromised account. But the real failure was step 2, movement. The network wasn't segmented. Okay, think of it like this. It's a house with no locks on any of the bedroom doors. Once a burglar gets through the front door, they can just wander into every single room they want. That lateral movement let them go anywhere. And finally, because of poor monitoring, they could slowly and quietly steal data for years without anyone noticing. And what did they get away with? Oh, it was a massive treasure trove of personal data. Of course, you have the usual stuff like names, addresses, phone numbers, emails. But it got so much worse. For millions of people, the hackers got their passport numbers and dates of birth. I mean, that's literally the keys to the kingdom for identity thieves. And on top of all of that, they even got their hands on some payment card details. So we know how it happened, but what about the fallout? You see, a breach on this scale creates these huge ripple effects that go way beyond just a press release and telling people to reset their passwords. The consequences for Marriott were, frankly, devastating. First, let's talk about the money. The costs were just enormous. You've got the immediate expense of trying to fix all these security problems, but then came the massive regulatory fines for failing to protect customer data. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And of course, a huge wave of class action lawsuits from all the guests who were affected. Operationally, it was a complete and total crisis. The breach forced them to do a top-to-bottom overhaul of their entire IT security. Just try to imagine rebuilding the foundation of a skyscraper while people are still living inside it. That's kind of the scale of the challenge they were facing. It was just a ridiculously disruptive and expensive thing for a global company to go through. But maybe the worst damage isn't something you can count in dollars. It's the loss of trust. For a brand like Marriott, trust is everything. Guests trust you to keep them safe, comfortable, and to protect their data. Once you break that trust, it is incredibly, incredibly hard to earn back. Sometimes it's even impossible. So while this story is a huge cautionary tale, it also gave the entire cybersecurity world some very clear, very hard-won lessons. What can we all learn from a failure of this size? It really all boils down to 3 absolutely critical takeaways. First, monitor. Constantly. This isn't a one-time thing. You need persistent threat detection to catch bad guys who are playing the long game. Second, segment your network. If that Starwood network had been properly divided up, the breach would have been stuck in one small corner instead of spreading everywhere. And third, encrypt everything that's sensitive. Data like passport numbers should be totally unreadable to anyone who doesn't have the key, whether it's just sitting on a server or being sent across the internet. And that really brings us to a final thought. The Marriott breach was a massive wake-up call for everyone. It proved that even the biggest, most powerful companies can fail to protect our most sensitive information. And it forces all of us to ask a really tough question. In a world that's this connected, is our data ever truly safe? That's something to think about.